Las Cruces, New Mexico. It says that you're 90 years old and you want to weigh in?
Yes, I'm 90 years old. I'm a veteran of World War II. And you were talking about labor unions. And labor unions made this country what it is today. I'm retired now and have a comfortable living because of the, I worked 30 years in the coal mines, and I have a comfortable living. And I'm sick to the stomach when I see what Trump is doing to this nation. And I'm in hopes that during the next election that Trump will be a forgotten thing. I remember all of the presidents from Roosevelt to Trump, and this is the worst period of time for the United States that I've ever seen.
Yeah. Are you, do you have any sense of history repeating itself? Clyde, you lived through the Great Depression and World War II.
Oh, yes. I have a very, men were out of work. I never did go hungry because we had a little farm and I had a cow. But men were working for $2 a day. And actually, when I got out of the Navy in 1946, I went to work in the coal mines. I was working 9 hours for under $9 a day. And when I retired because of the union, I was working for $123 for an 8-hour shift. And I have a pension from that. I also was working for the post office, and I was in the group that formed the post office from the U.S. Postal Service to what the post office is today. And I'm so pleased at the way this country has been run. And I voted Democrat all my life, and the reason I did is I raised a family, and it was always easier for me to raise a family when there was a Democrat in the White House. And I just wanted to let everybody know that this part of the country, or our country today, is in the 90-plus years that I've been on this earth. This is the most terrible thing that our country has ever gone through. I've never seen the president being such a liar. And I really, Tom, I really appreciate you letting me vent my anger on President Trump.
Yeah.
And,
well, Clyde,
thank you very much.
You're welcome, and I very much appreciate your calling and sharing your insight and experience with us, Clyde. I hope to hear from you again. Thank you for the call, and I hope when I'm 90, I'm as sharp as you are. Speaking of people who are 90 years old, let's hear Ronald Reagan tell a story about a 90-year-old. This 90-year-old's name was, as I recall, Smith L. Carpenter. Maybe it was Carpenter L. Smith. And Reagan, in 1948, was on the radio. In fact, here he is. Hang on just a second. Here he is.
This is Ronald Reagan speaking to you from Hollywood. You know me as a motion picture actor. But tonight I'm just a citizen, pretty concerned about the national election next month, and more than a little impatient with those promises the Republicans made before they got control of Congress a couple of years ago. I remember listening to the radio on election night in 1946. Joseph Martin, the Republican Speaker of the House, said very solemnly, and I quote, "We Republicans intend to work for a real increase in income for everybody by encouraging more production and lower prices without impairing wages or working conditions."
1946, by the way, was the year that, for the first time, since the Great Depression, since 1932, that the Republicans recaptured the House of Representatives. They held it for one session for 2 years, 47, 48, and then they lost it in 48 and didn't get it back again until Bill Clinton was president. But the Republicans took power, and Reagan is going to call them out for it.
Unquote. Remember that promise, a real increase in income for everybody. But what actually happened? The profits of corporations have doubled, while workers' wages have increased by only 1/4. In other words, profits have gone up 4 times as much as wages. And the small increase workers did receive was more than eaten up by rising prices, which have also bored into their savings. For example, here's an Associated Press dispatch I read the other day about Smith L. Carpenter.
Smith L. Carpenter, you're going to love the punchline. Listen to this story.
A craftsman in Union Springs, New York. Seems that Mr. Carpenter retired some years ago thinking he had enough money saved up so that he could live out his last years without having to worry. But he didn't figure on this Republican inflation, which ate up all his savings.
Oh, the Republican inflation. Tell us all about it, Ronnie.
And so he's gone back to work. The reason this is news is Mr. Carpenter is 91 years old.
There you go.
Now, take as a contrast the Standard Oil Company of New Jersey, which reported a net profit of $210 million after taxes for the first half of 1948, an increase of 70% in 1 year. In other words, high prices have not been caused by higher wages, but by bigger and bigger profits.
Oh, it's the
The Republican
corporations.
promises sounded pretty good in 1946. But what has happened since then, since the 80th Congress took over? Prices have climbed to the highest level in history, although the death of the OPA was supposed to bring prices down through, quote, the natural process of free competition, unquote. Labor has been handcuffed by the vicious Taft-Hartley law.
The vicious Taft-Hartley law. This is the law that allowed for so-called right-to-work states. Ronald Reagan. Labor has been handcuffed by the vicious Taft-Hartley Act.
Social Security benefits have been snatched away from almost 1 million workers by the Gearhart bill.
Yeah, see, that's what Republicans do.
Fair employment practices, which had worked so well during wartime, have been abandoned. Veterans' pleas for low-cost homes have been ignored, and many people are still living in made-over chicken coops and garages. Tax reduction bills have been passed to benefit the higher income brackets alone.
Whoa! Ronnie Reagan is opposed to tax cuts for the rich in 1948.
The average worker saved only $1.73 a week. In the false name of economy, millions of children have been deprived of milk once provided through the federal school lunch program.
Ronald Reagan was once in favor of school lunches. It was Reagan, by the way, you'll recall, who declared that ketchup was a vegetable so that school lunches didn't have to actually, spend the money for vegetables because, gee, that would have increased the cost of school lunches.
This was the payoff of the Republicans' promises. And this is why we must have new faces in the Congress of the United States, Democratic faces. This is why we must elect not only President Truman, but also men like Mayor Hubert Humphrey of Minneapolis, the Democratic candidate for senator from Minnesota.
Hubert Humphrey ran for president in 1968 against Richard Nixon.
Mayor Humphrey of 37 is one of the ablest men in public life. He's running against Joe Ball, who was a member of the Senate Labor Committee, helped write the Taft-Hartley law. The Republicans don't want to lose Ball, and they're spending a small fortune on his campaign. They've even sent Dewey and Warren out to Minneapolis to speak for him. President Truman knows the value of a man like Hubert Humphrey in the Senate, and he has been in Minneapolis, too, campaigning against Joe Ball. Mayor...
This is Ronald Reagan in 1948, broadcasting nationwide on the radio. It's a 4-minute ad for Democrats by Ronald Reagan on I don't know if it was the Blue Network or the Red Network or what it was called at the time, but there you go. How quickly they change.